Bandidos, by the end of 2023, the Division 2 will have delivered 26 exotic weapons to the player base. We got everything from amazing exotics to the not so hot performers. And that's got me thinking, especially lately with the recent releases of exotic weapons, the deliveries seem to be relatively inconsistent in how they're packaged, these exotics. From the design itself, the skin, to the mods, to the talent. And so I have to ask you, what makes an exotic an exotic? Let's talk about it. I have a question for you. What exactly makes an exotic weapon in the Division 2? Is it the mods, or is it the talent? Is it the way it is designed, as in the skin? I'm not sure there's a right answer here, but I'd love to see what the community's take, what your opinion is on what makes an exotic in the Division 2. Let me just tell you what I think, and let me know if you agree or disagree. But I think the biggest part of what makes an exotic is really its talent. And maybe that's not what makes an exotic, but that might make the difference between a good exotic and a bad one, perhaps. For example, let's look at the Pestilence. I think the Pestilence is one of the greatest all-time exotics of the Division 2. The reason why is because the talent is really unique, right? It delivers the Plague of the Outcast, and which is, you know, a debuff to the enemies. Basically, it's a damage, right? And the way it works is pretty straightforward. It's easy to understand and it's effective. It does what it says it's gonna do. That's always a good sign for an exotic, right? It's also on lore. And I think that's a key point, right? If you look at the skin, it's, you know, it's got duct tape and it's ratty-tatty looking, right? It looks like it was drugged through the gutters. That's cool. That's really cool. And I think that's also part of what makes a really good exotic is the weapons design itself. And the devs haven't been too bad at that, I gotta say. I think they relatively do a pretty decent job designing exotics as far as skin go. It's similar to like the Merciless, and they all kind of have that outcast feeling to it. That's on lore. The Plague of the Outcast is also on lore because that's something that's part of this game, or the storyline, is the DC-62 and all that yellow crap. The devs have also delivered weapons where they've pushed the exotic talent to its limits. And I'm not sure that's necessarily a good thing either, meaning they made some so unique to like too niche, and you rarely find this situation to actually use it. And one can say that the Shocker Punch might go down that alley. No, I like the idea of the Shocker Punch, but the reality is that you have to use a shield and you have to use the St. Elmo's, and you have to be encountering enemies sort of face to face in order to get that shock. And so that makes it like really niche because you have to have all 3 or 4 of those things going for you and your build and your play style. And so that, I think, makes the exotic too complicated. And I like the idea of the Shocker Punch, and I have fun when I use it, but wouldn't it be cool to be able to use it with the Ouroboros also? And then there's other ones like the Sacrum Imperium, which is just like really complicated and almost difficult to understand. You have to reread the talent a couple of times to be like, am I using this thing right? But there's some weapons in the Division 2 that are just nicely set in the middle. One might say the Lady Death is one of those. That's a really cool one because it boosts your speed. I mean, that's super exotic. There is nothing in the game that does that. And how awesome is that? Plus it gives you the damage, 75% amp damage, and it's not a perfect weapon, and it doesn't need to be, right? It's got a small mag and whatever. It's an amazingly designed weapon. Also, the skin itself is really cool. Super Division, super New York. In my opinion, that's a nicely designed exotic for the Division 2. And I'm sure there's others that I'm missing, but let's look at ones like the Nemesis. This one's kind of got me scratching my head on the Nemesis. So the Nemesis is really cool from a lore perspective because you have to like farm the pieces. It's a quest that you have to basically build it, and it provides a utility, which is basically a very strong one-shot punch, but it just delivers damage. That's it. That's all it does. But it's basically the strongest non-specialized sniper in the game, and it does have a place in the game. However, the talent isn't very, I'm gonna make up a word here, exotic-y, right? It's just not very exotic-y. The Mantis, on the other hand, is an amazingly designed weapon. It's got the really cool skin, looks like a sniper, it acts like a sniper, it farts like a sniper, except it's got this really cool talent where it resets your decoy. Nothing in the game does that. Nothing does. And that's an amazing talent, especially because it's on par for what a sniper actually needs. Why am I talking about this? Why is this a question? Well, let's talk about the Ouroboros. What makes it an exotic? What about the St. Elmo's? What makes it an exotic? Well, let's start with what sets it apart from the other weapons in the game. Well, it's damage. And then let's look at the talents. You know, are the talents very exotic-y? Well, I think for the Ouroboros, the answer is yes. The talent's very exotic-y. The problem is that the talent doesn't really perform. It might as well not even be there. It's not much of a conversational piece for people. You know what I mean? I mean, how many times do you hear people saying, oh my God, the talent is amazing on the Ouroboros? Probably never. Nobody ever really talks about it. What does everybody say? Oh my God, the DPS is amazing on the Ouroboros. That's what everybody talks about, right? Which is cool. I love a good DPS weapon as much as the next guy does. But for exotics, for me, I feel like the talent should be at least equally interesting as the weapon. You know, with the talent not being there, why didn't they just deliver us a non-exotic Ouroboros? Why don't they just give us a named weapon with a fixed mod, you know, like the Stoner has one of those, right? With perfect overwhelm on it, and it's got this locked in stability mod. So why don't they do that for the Vector? Just give us this locked in mod. We don't see a lot of that, I get it. So it's like they delivered us an exotic. It looks like an exotic, but it doesn't walk like an exotic. It just walks like a really good tactical Vector with great mods. Does the Nemesis feel like an exotic to you? Does the Regulus feel like an exotic to you? Now to the latter, absolutely. It blows people up. What the fuck? So cool. It looks cool, and it's a very special thing that it does. Like the Lady Death, the Regulus. These are great examples of great exotics, and they feel like exotics. And there's just a few exotics they throw in the game, and when they're very focused on just damage, I'm not so sure they feel like an exotic. The Iron Lung doesn't focus just on damage. It does this fire thing, and it does it really well, and so it feels like an exotic. The Ouroboros is just damage, even though the talent is a status effect thing, but it does that very poorly, so it doesn't feel like an exotic. So if I were to boil this down to just one question, the question is, does the Ouroboros feel like an exotic? I'm not asking if it's a good gun. I'm asking if it feels like an exotic to you. Thank you for hanging out with me today. My name is TuxedoBandido, and this was another episode of TuxTalks. If you found this video helpful, subscribe, like, and turn on notifications to ensure you don't miss out on the fantastic experiences waiting for you in The Division 2. If you want the details of the build I was using during the episode, follow the link displayed on the screen. If you have anything you want to see covered, be sure to let me know in the comments below. And thank you to all the channel members and donors who make everything possible. Tux Nation wouldn't be without you.
Follow me.
I get it.